looking in doing the nursing ones. They looked awesome, really good ones. I can't find any therapy ones. So are there any specific service notes for therapy?
Oh yeah. Did you not get the? I sent the PTO, TST, MSW, and nursing. Now the only thing I didn't do.
Sorry, Brendan. I used the wrong word. I meant care needs. I'm sorry.
Oh, care needs. I am working
the care
on
needs
the care
for
needs.
Therapy. Oh, okay.
I'm currently actually working on
in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, Brendan, people wanted to see a lot, you going through Care Efficient using the notes. It was hard for everyone with the PDFs to know exactly how it was going to work because in the demo with Miguel, it looked like there was a lot of radio buttons and just you were clicking through things. And on the PDF, there was a lot of dialogue boxes. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest concerns.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so did you want to just look at some of the nursing notes first, or because I may need to plot some PT? Okay. So does it matter which type of note you want to look at right now, or do you want to?
Well, it'd be nice to see a revisit because we've been able to play in the starter care and see how that. I mean, that's my opinion. Is there a nurse in there? I can't see everybody.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Jamie.
If we could. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I think for hospice, we'd like to see a admission visit. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll start with just this one of the routine notes in here for the skilled nursing. We kind of went over that. Oasis integrated the starter care on the same test patient last time. So, all right. So the first, of course, every single service note, it's going to start off the same way. It's going to have the service note header and supply section. This is where you'll enter your time in, your time out. It'll automatically calculate your duration. If you have travel duration, you can enter that and your mileage here. If you choose a mileage, though, you need to choose whether it's per mile or a flat rate, depending on how you guys are paying that out. For your signature, for them to sign, you can choose electronic signature. It's going to enter you're going to see a link saying enter signature here. And this is where the patient will sign at the end of the visit. So you will have to come back to this section to get your time out and then get the patient's signature. That signature is going to be time-stamped. You won't see it right here, but it is time-stamped when you print the note out. You're also going to see some clinical data down here. As you enter that information, allergies, functional limitations, activities permitted, it will start generating that information right here. It's all good to know information before you lay hands on the patient. Every time you hit next, it's going to save everything on that section, send that information to us, and then it's going to bring you to those care needs on the revisit. It won't be in your starter cares, obviously, because you haven't created your care needs yet. So on this test patient, we ended up throwing anxiety in there as the care need, and then the interventions are right here in this intervention column. And then the clinicians will just, say that they completed it, it wasn't applicable this visit, or patient or caregiver refused. And then they would just document, how did they tolerate that intervention, or why you didn't perform that intervention, et cetera, in the comment sections here. And then on your next one, you're going to end up with the goals section. So all your goals will show up in here. And you'll just say whether it's met, in process, not met, and then document your progress towards those goals in the comment section. And then it just kind of keeps going. Then you're going to get the patient identifier. It does have radio buttons. The radio buttons are single select, so that will only let you answer one of those responses. And then the squared ones are multi-select, so you can select all that apply. The comments box, if it's a multi-line text where it looks a little wider like this one, you will see those two little lines in that lower right-hand corner, and you can drag and drop that box so that you can see all of your documentation at once versus just those couple lines. Some of our sections do have copy previous data, and that can be turned on or off for any section that you guys want it or don't want it. The way that works is if there is another section, the same section, and as long as this is turned on, they're going to get the copy previous data link. They can click on that. Any completed service notes that have information in this section will be displayed here, and you'd be able to choose which note you want to pull that information over from, and it will automatically fill out all the responses just like in the other section. There's good and bad to that, of course. You know, the clinicians definitely need to be updating it to be pertinent and specific to that visit that day. So some agencies don't like it, some love it, some turn it on for some sections, some turn it on for all, some don't have it at all. So it's kind of up to you guys whether or not you want to use that or not. It can make your service notes look cookie cutter if they don't address that information and update the differences. So that's just something, as long as your staff is cognizant of that and they make those changes appropriately, it is a good feature. The vital signs, if we have, and I don't know if we ended up putting any on this test patient, but if you have vital sign parameters on the clinical tab, which those do flow to your 485 on your home health side, and they do go out with your 485, so they'll get signed by the physician. But what they'll do also is inside the service note, if they answer, they input a parameter or something outside of the range. So if it was like 96 to 101 and you entered 95.6, you'll get a little red icon with an exclamation point in it. And it just gives you a warning that, hey, this is outside the range. You're going to need to call the doctor. Doesn't force them to do it. Doesn't mean that information is accurate or correct. It just means that whatever they entered there is outside the range, and they should address that. Let's see what else to tell you. Again, we do have, on the integument assessment, we do have the add edit wound assessment, which if you click on that will bring up the human body. And then you can pick, plot where that wound is on their body and put in the wound description in here. Just by clicking on the body, choose your location, and then enter that wound description here. And these do flow into every service note that has this wound assessment, so that they'll see what the original location is and then the description of those wounds. Now, if a wound ends up being resolved during any visit, they would just click on that wound, and there's a little checkbox that says is resolved, and then hit save, and then you can see it changes it from a red to a green. The green ones are resolved and the red ones are active wounds. So this carries over into every single service note. The other thing about the integument is, we mentioned before, we strip out all of the wound care documentation, and we make it what we call apply on demand. That way you don't have to come up here and hit next 20 different times to get through all those wound sections, and then they all look blank because they don't apply to that patient. So we do have apply on demand, and we can do this with any section that you guys want. Yeah.
Can you go back to the wound, the very first page of the wound addendum? Do we see the picture on that page? Where is there? If we took pictures, would we be able to see the pictures on this page?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What?
Where when a picture is taken of a wound, where do you go to see the picture of that wound? Is it connected to this page?
It's actually going to be under the Documents tab in the Patient Encounter. Any photos of wounds or anything that you upload, even if you attach it to a service note, they're going to be visible under the Documents tab. So I can show you that when I get out of here. But anything that's uploaded, whether it's some kind of a wound picture or any kind of addendum thing that you needed to add to your service note, there is a way to upload those, kind of attach them to the service note. But anything uploaded to the encounter is going to be viewable under that Documents tab. So you won't actually see it within the service note itself. You would have to go to the Patient Encounter.
Okay, thanks.
And this does print on the print view of the service notes. If you needed to send off your service notes for an audit or anything like that, this is also added into the print view of the service notes, so you'll see this information here. The apply on demand, again, we strip all those sections out unless you need them. Right now we have diabetic foot exam, a lab, and then all of these wounds. So we have a couple for burns, diabetic ulcers, other wounds, pressure ulcers, surgical wounds, and venous ulcers. So they would pick all that apply to this patient and then just hit save, and then those on-demand sections will be added into this note. So they weren't there to begin with, but now you can see under the integument, both those wound sections are there now. And then again, I don't know if
Are you wanting to ask him a question?
So the form then, as we see it, is, I guess, what's recommended the way that you have it. And then those would only be the things that you did on supply and demand, labs and wounds. Otherwise, the way the service note exists is the recommended format.
correct.
Did you say? Okay, thank you.
Yes, correct. And we can make edits on there if needed, if there's things that are missing, or if you need anything taken away, we can make those changes. But they are the way they are recommended.
You can ask your question.
So,
So
I went through one of these briefly. Oh, sorry, Jean, you can go ahead.
So if a patient comes on, like say with a surgical wound, and a couple weeks later ends up with a surgical wound and a pressure injury, I guess there's a drop down that you just hit add new wounds, or
That's the on-demand, so you add a second wound.
so you have to hit like
Yeah, so the surgical wound from the
button to-
start continues through, and anytime a new wound happens, you use the on-demand function to grab a new wound to document. Is that correct?
Correct. Now there's a way that we just came out with an enhancement where if they added an on-demand section to the service note previously, if we have that copy forward turned on for those sections, then those on-demand wound sections will pre-populate in the follow-up visits. So all the visits after they were initially added. So they will pre-populate. Now, the only downside to it is if you don't document anything on it and then you save and close your note, it will remove those sections, but you just click on Apply on Demand and you can add them right back in by clicking on that. So it's up to you guys. Otherwise, they will have to do Apply on Demand every single time to get these sections into their notes. So they'll have to
That's
remember to do
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
weird.
yeah, because if you do a
Yeah.
copy forward and the person doesn't document before you,
Right.
then it drops off for the next person. Is that what's gonna happen?
Well, no, if they're in the note on a previous note and they did document it and they completed their note, when the next person goes in, those wound sections will flow into the note automatically instead of them having to click on Apply on Demand. And then the only bad thing is that they would have to definitely update the measurements for those wounds, of course, update the documentation, but it will automatically flow forward. Now, for some reason, they were in the visit, they only documented all the way up to before those wound sections. Maybe they got all the way up to the integument section and documented, and then they had to hit save and close. If there was no information on there, they will pull it back out, but then they can just hit Apply on Demand when they come back in to edit their note, and they can put them right back in. So they'll just have to be aware of that.
But, so if person one adds a wound and they're documenting, the person two who does the next visit does not document in the wounds, then person three comes and opens a visit. They won't even know
Right.
there were new wounds that were started by person one. Is that true?
No, it'll go ahead and pull into that third person three's note as well. As long as they were in the initial note, they're going to pull back into that third note as well.
Okay.
So even
And that's if you have,
number two didn't.
is that only if you have copy forward on, or is that always?
That's correct. Only if copy forward is turned on. That's the only way that works. So that's also the only way to turn it off, so that it doesn't automatically do that. We just have to turn those off, and right now they're turned off. We don't turn that on
It
for the wound section.
it seems like though in a wound, we would want copy forward. I mean, that seems like not a bad place to use it. Is there a downside to doing it there? I'm missing that.
The only downside, in my opinion, would be is if those clinicians didn't update those measurements or other descriptive information in that documentation. If they just don't update it, they copy it forward and they just move on, then it might look like every one of your visits has the exact same wound measurements. The plus side is it will pull in the previous wound measurements, so you will see what those are, and you would know if it increased or decreased and by how much.
Yeah.
Because that information would be right there in front of you. So there's some plus sides to it. They
Okay.
just have to know. They just have to know they have to address that information and make changes.
And it's something that you guys would want to spot check, because you may find, just from my experience as a surveyor and a regional QA person, some, obviously clinicians do a great job with that, but I would spot check it because sometimes they get in a hurry and they don't edit it. And so what I've seen sometimes on surveys is I'll see, weeks and weeks and weeks with no change in the wound sizes and the wound documentation, and then boom, all of a sudden the wound's healed. And so that kind of tells you that they're not editing that documentation. So I would at least do spot checks if you're going to copy that forward.
Okay. Thank you.
I did.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Any other questions about the service note? I mean, do you want me to go through every section? It's got your head-to-toe assessment, your integument, your neuro, cardiac, respiratory, gastrointestinal, endocrine,
I had a
nutrition.
question on this.
Sure.
Is there a spot specific for signs and symptoms of a UTI? Like, where would people chart that? That's big for us. It's one of our goals. Our QI goals is a lot of it surrounded around UTIs, and I didn't see something specific.
Now, there's a couple of things you can do. If you're teaching signs and symptoms or assessing signs and symptoms, you may want to add that as a care need in the settings. If it's not there already, we can add a care need for something like that, and then have an intervention and a goal for those, so they can be, when you're adding or creating your care plan, those will automatically pull into your notes to address if they're at risk for that. So we can do it as a care need.
I think you do have it as a care need and then interventions and the goals, but we'd like it, and there's other people in the room, but currently we like it from the start of care moving forward on every patient. Then so that they assess on the start of care, they teach signs and symptoms of a UTI and what to do about it. And then, it doesn't have to be on every visit after that, but if there's a way for it to always be there, then we can either meet the goal or not, but not count on the individual nurse to have to bring it in. Is there a way that it can just start off there? Am I explaining that? Does that make sense?
No, I think I understand. Now, there's not a way, if we did it as a care needs, there's no way to just automatically add that. Somebody would have to add that as a care needs to all your patients. If we added something in here in your, GU regarding teaching, I mean, it does have the GU assessment. It'll talk about do they have signs and symptoms of a UTI? But we could add a teaching. I mean, there is a genitourinary documentation and teaching comments box. They can type anything they want in there, but we can customize this so it addresses it as well. So it's in every note, but it would be in every note with this section.
Oh, this section actually looks good. Okay, well, we'll look at that a little bit more detail. I don't want to take up your time. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. But yeah, in every discipline, the PT notes are going to be geared towards PT, OTST, that you should have them all. But just so you know, there is under the reports menu, there's this note/forms report. that if you guys ever went to this, you could see what forms are in there for each discipline and which ones, you know, they have access to. Of course, PT and the other therapies may do starts of cares, as you know, Oasis and stuff. So you could pick PT and then see what their start of care Oasis looks like, because it will look different than the skilled nursing start of care. It's going to have the same Oasis questions in there, but their head-to-toe assessments are going to look, they're going to be geared towards their discipline. But you can come in here and this will let you see what everyone knows.
Wait, can you do that one more time, Brendan? Can you back up to the reports tab and just reports tab?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you just up here at the top under the reports menu, you're going to scroll down to the notes/forms report.
Okay.
And it'll bring you to this screen here. Now, you have the option to look at your service notes, your associate forms, and your patient forms, all from right here. But then you can select which agency type for, you know, home health, hospice, or the caregivers. And then the service category, you can pick the discipline, or you can leave it at all. And then you can come down here and look at all, these are all the different note types that are available.
Okay,
And the ones
can
with
you do
hospice
one?
are,
Yeah, pick one. And then
so we'll just do a start of care, and we'll say this one's for PT, because you guys have kind of seen the other one. But then you hit export, and it's going to create a file. And of course, you can, if you did all of them, it might take a minute to generate, because it's going to be hundreds and hundreds of pages. And always keep in mind, your on-demand sections are going to be in here as well, and they're not always in the note unless you add those. So you will see, you know, 20-something wound sections on here.
But then are we going to see the form just like you're showing it to us now with the radio buttons and all of the?
Well, it does have, you can see the radio buttons. Now, this is just a printable view of it. So you can see the check boxes and you can see the radio buttons, like here, right here. You can see those in the note. The only thing you really can't see is where it has a comments or something. You can't see where the, you know, that it has a multi-line text box for you, or the lab attained, or the other. Those are going to have, in the actual edit mode of the note, those are going to be text boxes, or potentially dates. So like the date of onset, in the service note itself, it's going to have a little calendar you can click on and pick the date, or just type in the date. But this is pretty much what it looks like. And then, of course, other than it being filled out, you know, with these text boxes being answered, it's going to look like this on the print view when you print those service notes as well, other than they will have the header and supplies section, which has the time in, time out, the clinician's, you know, name, who did it, the patient's name, all that kind of stuff. That's not in this view. It would be in the other notes, but normally it'd be right in front of this first section. So they look the same in general, other than that these are blank, not filled out.
Does this look different?
You're wanting to see what the clinician's view is? Is that what you're wanting to see, that what the clinician sees?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so in that, excuse me, in that case, they would want to log in, and I don't know, Brendan, do we have clinical trainer set up in here yet?
Yeah, we
They
have.
could assign themselves the visit that they want to look at, and log in as clinical trainer, and go in as that clinician, so they could see what the note looked like as the clinician.
So the login for clinical, or do you want to give them the login, or?
Do we
or
even
you
have a
guys
test
can use,
patient in there yet?
Yeah, there's an admission test I put in there for that process as well. But you guys can use that, the test patients that are available, get some visits assigned to them, and then they can go and choose to add a service note and see exactly what it's going to look like. So you can use these test patients that you have.
That's the part where we weren't able to figure out how to actually get to a revisit note or assign ourselves to that, because obviously,
Right,
we're getting ahead of
writing,
ourselves.
generating orders for ourselves and scheduling us, we blanked out.
Yeah, we haven't really ever covered that.
Right, because you guys
So to
haven't had
add-
training yet. That's
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Well, if you have a 485 in an initiated or saved status, then you can go into the edit pencil of it and plot different disciplines. Now, you may not be able to use some of these visits because, or they may be locked down because we got them assigned. See how the skilled nurse are grayed out? Because once you assign those visits, besides the initial assessment visit or any other add-on assessment visit, those assessment visits are the only ones that you can assign to a clinician. That gives them an opportunity to go out there, assess the patient, do their documentation, and then still come back to the order to add to their discipline. But once you add any frequencies and durations inside of an order, directly inside of the order, once you assign it, or there's a scheduling note attached, or, service note attached, or any kind of other transaction like the service has been verified, any of that's going to lock down that frequency. Then the only way to add it is with an additional order. But you guys can add addendum orders to any of these patients at any time and get as many visits on there as you want to give to all the staff to kind of play with. But it works the same way as this one. So this one has a PT assessment visit here at the, already allotted. So I can come down here, choose my discipline. We'll just say we'll leave it at PT. You can just add visits for every day of the week if you wanted to for that whole duration. Now, the clinicians, just so you know, will not be able to add service notes on a date of service in the future. They'll only be able to add service notes for today and then any time in the past. But once you get some scheduling on here, now we haven't gone through how to do all this scheduling. It's kind of a lot to it, but basically you've got your discipline, you've got your frequency, which weekly is the most common, but you do have a monthly frequency, a daily frequency, and the daily is how you would go plot more than one visit on a day. So if say you're going 3 times a day to see a patient, you'd have to use the daily frequency. The Q would be like Q3, and it would plot a visit every 3 days for the entire duration that you choose. And then, of course, the PRNs you can add, but they won't physically go on the calendar unless you go through a separate step to get them there. But if you leave it on the weekly, your amount is how many times per week, and we put the days of the week so we can know where to put that visit. But you would be able to drag and drop those visits anywhere within that Medicare week on the patient or associate calendar. So they would be able to be moved within that week. And then your duration, if you're set at weekly frequency, your duration is going to be the number of weeks. So once you add some visits here, they're not physically on the calendar. This is just going to kind of give you a visual of what that's going to look like. And then you'll come down here and you'll see the scheduled discipline. If you click on that scheduled discipline, it physically puts those visits on the calendar. On a real patient, of course, you want to make sure that's right, as close to perfect as possible. Because, again, once you go in here to the scheduling link up here at the top, it's going to bring you into that calendar. Once you even assign one of those visits, it's going to end up locking down that frequency and duration inside the order. So on a real patient, you want to make sure you got it right. But then you can either click on a visit one at a time and choose edit, and then you would be able to change the service code if you wanted to. And then for now, you're going to have to hit override availability check so that it ungrays out the boxes next to the clinicians. And then you're going to find their name. And I don't have PT rates on the clinical trainer. I'll have to add those. But you can pick whoever, put a checkbox next to whoever you want to assign that to, and hit save, and it will assign that visit to that clinician, and it will then be on their home screen for them to add the service note. There's a faster, if you want to add more than one visit to a clinician, there is mass assign. So you'd find the therapist that you're looking for over here, find their name, You may have to change this discipline, but it's typically going to default to any of the unassigned visits discipline. But you click on the calendar with a green plus, and that's mass assigned. So you'll have to hit override availability again until everybody's compliance and stuff is updated in the HR stuff. Every single one of these visits have a checkbox next to it. Will be assigned to that one clinician. If you wanted all your Monday visits assigned to one clinician and your Wednesdays to another, you can filter to those days of the week up here, hit search, and then down here you can see under the DOW, which is day of week. Now I only have my Monday visits, and I can assign all of the Monday visits to this one
The
clinician.
training module.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to.
So you're in our system now. These are our patients that we created, and you just added some visits it looks like that we could play with. And you know how to do it, and we don't. So now that the physical therapy ones are there, we can open those, right? And see what it looks like, and will we see that then the care needs?
The disciplines haven't been added.
So the care needs,
So
I'm still working on them. I think I'm basically done with OT, and then I'm going to be on PT, ST, and then MSW, which I'm going to work
so
on.
We can wait.
Yeah, today or tomorrow I should have those done. Just kind of depends on if I can do it uninterrupted, how many calls I get and stuff. But I'll try to get it done today. I was working on them Friday to get them all in there. But we'll get some in there. And again, even the ones that we have from base, they may not cover everything you guys need to do, or there just may be something that you guys have to add in the future. So I can show you guys how to add those to the clinical tables. You just add a care needs first, and I can show you this on another time if needed, but I'm going to try to get those other ones taken care of first. We'll create a care need if it doesn't exist already, and then we'll just add interventions and goals and attach them to that care need, so that when you add it to the now to see the care needs, remember they need to be added on the orders tab.
Yeah, that I was able to figure out all the way to the right. There's like a thing you pull down, and then you could see them, and then you tapped on them. Yeah. Yeah,
there's attached care needs. Is the way you're going to add them, and then they're going to display down here and see underneath the care needs section. We already added that one for anxiety, and so once we get it down here, then we can actually edit the intervention and goal description. So we can first we'll add the goals and it'll come from the settings and add interventions, but then we can edit the verbiage. So again, a lot of those goals, especially the goals, are set up as a kind of a template, and then you need to make it patient specific as far as time frames or when are they going to meet this goal, by how much or whatever. So a lot of the goals from the settings are. Sorry?
I saw on the goals where it had a start and an end date, and I was wondering, is that like a way of creating a short-term goal and a long-term goal based on when you put start and end?
No, the start date's going to be typically the beginning of whenever you're going to begin that intervention is what it's going to be. Typically, it's going to be the start of care date or the beginning of that episode. Or if they were a rock and they had a new intervention, it'd be the date of that rock probably. But the end date, I've seen agencies go both ways. Some of them make their clinicians put an end date in there. I don't recommend it necessarily, because what if they didn't meet that goal within 2 weeks? As of that end date, that intervention or that goal, whatever you end dated, will not be in the service notes moving forward. So if they didn't meet that goal and you've already end dated it, you could lose track of that intervention and goal or goal.
Yeah,
or both.
I wondered about that. But, we've been lucky on survey. We haven't had much debate about, well, where's your short-term and where's your long-term goals? And that's partially because NGS is our MAC, but like Palmetto, for example, is super on. If you don't have short and long-term goals, they'll deny the whole claim. So that was the only thing I was thinking was the end date supposed to designate a shorter-term goal, and your long-term goals, right out to the end of the cert period? Or is there a different way
Actually,
of designating it?
in the therapy notes, I believe there is in the reassessment, there is a compare section, a documentation section. So it's not actually your care needs, but there is a short-term and long-term goal documentation section. So you guys
And what
can
about for
document
nursing? Do they have something too, or no?
that. They don't have short-term, long-term goals. As far as I know, only our therapy notes have those in there.
Okay, thanks.
But we could add, of course, if you needed us to add a section for short-term, long-term documentation, we can definitely add something like that too. That's nursing notes. But what would happen is now, if they ended up reaching that goal and meeting that goal, now you no longer need to provide that intervention and goal. You would either on your 485 on your research, or you could add a clinical update order, and you can adjust these care needs. And then what'll happen is all the active care needs, interventions, and goals will pull over to every 485 or every clinical update order you write. And at that time, you could end date the ones that no longer apply if they've met the goal and you no longer need to perform an intervention, or you could add additional interventions and goals. So if something new happened, if the patient was hospitalized and have a new diagnosis, something's going on, you can add a clinical update order, mid-episode or any time actually, and then you can go ahead and make those changes. End some, add some. You can make any adjustments that you need to. Any other questions? And we're going to go in greater detail, of course, when we actually do all our training, and there's a lot of different order types for your frequencies and durations. On your test patients, you guys always have the option to add addendum orders. If you hover over the action item menu next to that 485 in the episode you're concerned with, there's a add addendum order. This gives you a calendar so that you can plot additional visits on top of what you already have from your previous orders. So this would be an addition to. A good example is if you're going one time a week to see a patient, but the doctor changed the blood pressure and he wants you to go out there and monitor the blood pressure for 3 days in a row. Maybe you don't have PRNs available. You can add an addendum order to get those 2 extra visits for that 1 week on there. So the addendum is just going to throw visits on top of what you already have. But there are other order types that we're going to end up discussing, which are replace disciplines, discharge disciplines, things like that. So if your frequencies and durations change, they increase or decrease, we can do a replace discipline order. It'll wipe out the calendar that they have for that discipline from that effective date forward, and then we can plot a new frequency and duration for the rest of the episode. So there's a lot of different order types and stuff that deal with frequencies, but we'll go over all the different order types when we go through the training. I'll go through the home health ones, and of course, Chrissy will go through the hospice ones. Any other questions right now?
Are they going to show us the hospice one? Or?
Can you do the hospice service notes as well, please?
Can I do the what? The hospice service notes?
Yes.
Well, again, there's and I don't know if we have a hospice test patient in here yet. You can of
No,
course
but I can
see
put
what
one
the
in.
forms. Okay. Of course, on the notes forms report, you can filter to your hospice notes as well. So if you wanted to see what his start of care looks like,
I got it open right now.
Here's one of those, yeah, hospice RN admission his. You can like, you can see what those look like.
Does hospice have care needs like home health does, and interventions and then goals that go with the specific
Yes.
Yes.
need? Okay. And Jean, have you had a chance to look through those care needs and their goals?
We haven't looked through the care needs, but we'd like to look through.
Do you guys know how to look up those care needs and then and interventions and goals besides on the patient encounter?
Can you run?
No.
No.
No, you
Whoever, and it's going to be based off security. Any of the administrator role, people with the administrator role will always have the access here, but this is based on security on their role. But if they have access to settings, they can go to lookup tables, clinical support tables, and then there's care needs, which are going to be those problem statements. You know, their issues or whatever. You know, it's basically the broad term for whatever's going on with them, such as anxiety or alteration and elimination. So these are going to be just basically labels. And so you can see all of them that are in here right now. And all the hospice ones have hospice in front of them. The home health aid care plan and homemaker care plans, that's its own care need, because then, of course, the nurse, when they develop the care needs for the home health aid, it's going to put in just those interventions that the nurse wants her to do for that patient. But then you have your therapies in here. I've got the care needs started in there. I just don't have all the interventions and goals attached yet.
Can you
but I've
show
got
us?
them all in. Mm-hmm.
Can you show us one such as maybe dyspnea? Do you have one on dyspnea?
Yeah. So on this
for hospice.
screen, you're not really going
For
to see
hospice,
anything. There, like this one has a breathing pattern ineffective for hospice. So this is just, again, this is only going to be your problem or label. To see the interventions and goals that are attached to it, you have to go to clinical support tables and then go to your goals and interventions. So if you go to interventions, if you filter this care need to whatever, like the hospice breathing pattern ineffective, this is going to show you the interventions and goals that are already in there. The description is going to be right here on the left column. So that's what the clinicians are going to have available to choose from. You can add interventions if these don't have enough, or you want something different in there. You can choose add intervention or add mass interventions. Add interventions will let you add just one at a time. Add mass will let you add up to 10, but they all have to be related to the same care need. So if you were, for example, you hit add mass, you would choose your care need. And I'm not going to make changes here, but you would choose your care need that these interventions are going to, you want them attached to. And then you can make it discipline specific if you needed to, if it's only for nursing or for PT, OT, ST, et cetera. And of course, you'd want to have a start date in there. Now we have this option, and when it defaults to yes when you're adding these, to where a response is required. So inside of your service note, where that you choose you completed it this visit or not completed it, or not applicable this visit, or patient caregiver refused, this is going to require them to say something about it, that they addressed it one way or the other. If it's at no, that means they can skip even giving it any kind of a response. So I recommend leaving it at yes, but again, that's up to you guys. You don't have to have any kind of group code. It's just going to filter it from alphabetical order if there is no group code in there. But then you can add up to 10 interventions, and the goals work exactly the same way. So the care need has to exist first, because when you get to this point, you can see you have to relate it to the care need. So if it's not in the care needs table, then it will not show up in this table. And Craig Jones usually goes through that, but I go through it a lot too, just to make sure you guys are aware, because there's so many times that you're going to need to add these or make adjustments to them. Our baseline has quite a few in there, but it may not have everything you need.
Can you just run through one of the ones you have one of the interventions you have there or goals, or just pick one and run it through?
Yeah, like on the, well, I mean, you can, again, for the interventions, you can just pick any of them that you want, and you're going to see what's already available for them. So these are all the interventions for abuse and neglect, potential for. So these are all the ones that came from BASE. So you could just go through, the only way to really tell is to go through each one, and you'll see what interventions. And then the same thing for the goals. You would go to the settings, look up table, clinical support tables, and go to goals. And then again, you're going to look up your care need, and then you're going to see what goals are available for that care need. And then just like adding on the interventions, it's the exact same thing. You have to have the care need first, the problem statement, and then you can filter to your disciplines, start date, and then type in the descriptions here and add up to 10 of them at a time. And you can add, 20 or 40 or 50 if you want, but you can only add 10 at a time. And
Okay,
like I
I've
said,
added a hospice test. Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I've added a hospice test patient for you in one of your test environments. And I've scheduled the initial visits for all the disciplines. And I gave you some routine visits for the nurse. So if you want to assign those to yourself or to clinical trainer, either one, you'll be able to go in and see what that looks like.
And you can do the care needs the same way for those hospice patients. So you just do add care needs outside of this care plan.
Can we run through the service note for a hospice admission?
Sure.
I think we're going to have to get a payer added here.
Hey, I got it. I'm almost done. There we go. I was going to do charity, but it didn't. Yeah, are you looking at Tommy? Yeah, okay. I think I should be ready. I just got to schedule. Go to the schedule. So give me one sec. So I should be on the calendar now. Okay, so I'll put the admission in, Brendan, as for clinical trainer. They do?
Oh, they're all red. They're all saying non-billable. She may not have the service code set up quite yet, but we should still be able to hopefully add those pay.
Yeah, and it's not bringing me. Let me see if we've got any associates in here as hospice.
No.
We were all right. Everybody has no associates.
Let me look at clinical trainer and see if I can add. I'll add hospice agency to that one.
Well, we may need to add all those training environments because I never added these before.
Can you go into one of the test patients we started and activate them in hospice training, our hospice training? Sandy Beach, can you do something?
Now let me see if yeah, give us 1 second. I think we can have it set up. I just want to make sure we got to where we have staff now. Yes, okay, clinical trainers there. So I'm going to assign that first visit. I have actually said we're admitting this patient on 1-1, and I'm going to assign it to clinical trainer. Although, ladies, I haven't been in here to look at these or rearrange these notes because I was waiting for what you guys want, what your notes to look like. So
I think we just had some questions on what would be what do you call it? Supply and demand. What they look.
Okay.
What sections?
Okay, so she added this Tommy test patient in your hospice training environment, and here's the service note. So it's going to show us the service code. Let me back up. So just, of course, click on the visit, choose Add Page Service Note Assessment, and then you're going to pick your note type. And so this one for the RN admission is. We'll hit Continue.
Is this, I mean, the note type is sort of like what you're doing right now is just printing what we already have. You can't run through it like if it was a live clinician going through what they would see?
Yeah, this is exactly what they would see.
Okay.
Now that patient was already activated, and that works the same way in hospice, right, Christy, where they activate a pending patient when they go to add their service note?
Yep.
That's the only difference is we skip one screen.
I see it.
So this is exactly what they're going to see. Again, every service note is going to have your service note header and supply section. Typically, they're going to know, they'll get their time in whenever they get there, and then they'll just, again, hit next and move throughout the entire assessment. So here's your diagnosis codes. Hospice admission profile.
So in that area, some of that pre-populates in?
No, nothing. Well, no, nothing's going to pre-populate in here in this note.
So every visit, like the first verbal CTI, does that flow over to the revisit notes, or they type that back in?
Well, this piece of hospice admission profile is just for the admission note. So not every note will start out with that question.
Okay.
This is just trying to make sure that the nurse has received her 2 verbal certifications, if in fact there is 2 positions. It's kind of a double check for you, but that could be removed if you want it removed.
That's fine. So no, that's fine. Okay. So.
And then you'll notice that the HIS questions are integrated throughout the comprehensive assessment. So when you get to the pain comprehensive assessment, that's where your pain HIS questions will be at.
Right. So we know, yeah, that's exactly his questions. That's fine. It's the Edmonton that we would like really just in a drop down, or like.
Do you want it on as apply? Do you want it as an apply on demand, or do you want it in a section altogether?
In a section altogether.
Okay. And Brendan, I apologize. I have a meeting that's supposed to start. No, that is supposed to start in 3 minutes. So I may have to drop off to go to that one.
Can I ask, in the hospice respiratory assessment, it says was shortness of breath brought to acceptable level within 48 hours. The nurse goes back into this admission document to complete that question?
Nope. If you're doing your admission all in one day, we'll take that out of there. This is for agencies that do their admission over a 2-day span.
Okay, so that'll come out.
That'll come out, right? Okay.
Yes, that'll come out for you guys, correct.
And then when we go to the lung sounds, like in this hospice one, we don't have lung fields. I think I saw one in home health where it had the little sections. Are we set up the same way, or is it just what it says, lung sounds, CTA, wheezing, crackles? We don't have the.
Yeah, that was one of, right. We just have the location of abnormal lung sounds in the text box, but you guys talked about in the one meeting I was in with you guys getting together and deciding if you want the different locations. So whatever you mark up on that printed form that you have, I'll create.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't, because we saw it in the home health and it was different in hospice, so we can add that. Same thing goes with the edema and the bowel sounds.
Yep, you can add whatever you want.
Okay.
If you just write it on there and send it. Now, the reason that we did the way we did in the hospice world, the reason the notes were created in the way that they are, is that, home health's much different. You want to know exactly where things are going on because you're fixing to treat, whereas hospice, we're managing symptoms. And so that was kind of the philosophy, but if you want them all in there, you can have them all.
Yeah, because we're still documenting to why we have them on there. So yeah, we would like them. like we do our physical
So I
assessment.
think Christy has to go to another meeting, but basically she's saying just write on the document what we want and then she can edit it.
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure it wasn't like a box and all this stuff
Right.
flowed in and we didn't know that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else you guys want to see?
I'm sorry, Brendan, you guys can stay on if they need to see something else. I'm just going to jump off and go to my other meeting.
Christy.
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see the minutes. It's my first one.
So,
Well,
um,
well, for me, this is so helpful and just makes me feel like I can flow around it a little bit better and understand, but also just trust the process that we're going to get to it and you're going to show us it and I could be a little calmer. So thank you so much.
We are going to go through all the little different, I mean, we're going to go through so much more than what we've done so far. So we'll go in greater depth on all of this. And again, you know, we can make changes on the fly. It's better if we get them done in the beginning and then just make minor tweaks if needed down the road. But we can still change them. I mean, the way we do our notes, we can put start and end dates to each question or answer to a question. So we can adjust them on the fly too. And some of this stuff is mapped, you know, on the home health side. You know, again, all those locators and things that are inside the start of care note, all of that maps to the 485 and to the clinical tab. So there's no double documenting that I'm aware of in CareFishing. If it needs to be somewhere else as well as your note, we map it so that it goes somewhere else. So there's a lot of locators that will, once you approve your note, it'll fill out most of the top half of the 485.
Is there
care service.
Brendan, is there graying out two sections? So if you say no initially to a question, then the follow-up questions gray out?
On the Oasis, we have what we call skip logic in there. So if you were to answer one and then it you know normally would say now you need to skip to this one, we just remove the one you have to skip automatically based off your response. So your clinicians never have to worry about it, but that only works on your Oasis questions. It doesn't work on anything else. So any regular question, we can't do skip logic. Like if we were to create a question here, if they answer no, then skip this. If they answer yes, then you know not gray this out or whatever. We can't do that in just your normal questions, but your Oasis is built in. It'll skip them. It's really cool.
Okay. Anything else, team? Okay, we'll get
so you know, on some of your, like when you start researching patients, you know, after we get them into the system, some stuff will carry over from the previous Oasis, mainly your diagnosis codes. And then, of course, some of the identifier information, all that's going to always carry over. The payer, source, MO150, all that kind of stuff will carry over. But all the rest of the actual set, like your ADLs, pain, vision, you know, things like that, they will not pull over. But your payer source and diagnosis codes. So some of the more, you know, go ahead.
Brendan, so do you have, like what we have now is when we're doing a discharge Oasis, or when the clinician picks a choice, it will let you know yellow, red, or green, like what you're answering is an improvement from the last Oasis assessment, rock research start, or the same, or a decline. Is there that kind of logic in this system?
Yes. With the HH Gold analysis, it doesn't look like that. I think I've seen what you're talking about. I think it's really nice how it has the red, green, yellow. However, we don't have that. But on the HH Gold, on a discharge, you will be able to. You'll see where it says Analyze/Compare inside your service note. It'll be up here towards the top where all these other buttons are on for your Oasis, and it'll do the analysis, and it'll tell you that you've improved, you've declined, and even on the start of care, if you answered like 0 on pain, it's going to give you a heads up on the original analysis. Hey, there's no room for improvement here. You've already marked them as a 0. But then again, on your OASIS analysis, you can compare it to your start of care or your most recent ROC, and it'll tell you where you've improved and where you've declined, and additional information. It's kind of mixed together in there. It's not as pretty as the graphs that you get with the yellow, green, and blue, red, but it will be in there, and I'll show you that when we go through training. We can go through a discharge and OASIS and compare it to the start of care, and I'll let you guys see what that looks like. But there is an OASIS analysis, and I might actually have the first part of it on this admission test patient. So there is under the OASIS here. Even before the service note's complete, you can hover over the action item menu there and do this OASIS analysis. And it'll give you, of course, this one probably wasn't filled out, but it'll give you inconsistencies just within this single OASIS as far as you answered one ADL question this way, you didn't answer this other one this similar way, so it's telling you maybe you need to look at this question. And of course, anything that's red is going to be a fatal. That's because I didn't fill this completely out. But you would get your analysis. You're going to get all kinds of information as far as codes, diagnosis codes, grouping codes, just inconsistency flags between one question and another, which is typically your ADLs. 5-star and VBP. Let's see if there's any in here. There's some of these that are going to be labeled 5-star and VBP for your value-based questions or your 5-star questions, timely admission, things like that. And it will tell you, again, like on the pain, if you answered pain 0, that's a 5-star VBP question. So it's going to actually say, hey, there's no room for improvement on this patient. And then when you do the compare, it's going to look like this, but it's going to have a comparison between the first time you answered the GG, 0100, and then on discharge, what you ended up answering. So it will say that you've improved or declined, but it's not as pretty as what you guys are probably used to.
Thank you.
What about for hospice? Is there any, like we have it, like I think when we answer pain, respiratory, right, Julie? We get the red and the greens. Does hospice have something similar in your program?
They do. There's QAPI reports for hospice that has some of that information on there. Christy's the better one to ask for that. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if there's a different thing or if there's an analysis or compare, because the only one I'm aware of is for home health. Let's see. Hold on. Let me go to this Tommy test and see if we have something over here. I don't even have the hospital item set in here. Yeah, they don't have an analyze in their system for the hospice item sets. There's not an analyze inside of here.
What about like in the pain assessment tools? Like I noticed if I follow a nurse and I did a black, it'll tell me, oh, it's red or it's green. I improved in this area or I didn't improve in this area. Do you guys do that like from your pain assessment moving forward, or there's nothing like that?
No. Now, they're inside the service notes. You can view other service notes, so you can look at the previous service notes as long as they're in a completed status. While you're in the edit mode of your note, you do have an option to view all of the other service notes that are in a completed status, so you can view that information. But as far as I know, nothing carries over from one note to another. And of course, if we turned on, any of those sections to carry over to copy previous data, then some information will flow, but only if you turn that part on. And then, of course, they'd have to make changes. But nothing's going to prompt you to to reevaluate a certain thing. You know, if, like, for instance, you know, if you're following up to see if their breathing is improved within 48 hours, nothing's going to prompt you to say it's been 48 hours, you need to reassess their breathing or something like that. You would just have to plot a visit, you know, within the time frame, and then they would have to know to check for that. So the care needs, you know, if you've got that in there as a care need, then of course it will pull over to every single service note within the start and end date of that care need.
I just wanted to see where is it in the documentation that you see the wound pictures? Where would I go?
You might not see it from that note forms report. I don't remember if I'd have to double check here. But it should be right by the integument and wound education sections if it is going to print. Now, inside the service, or like when you print that real service notes that have been filled out and documented on, those wound pictures will print on the print view as well. I can kind of show you what that'll look like. Oh, over here. There it is. It's under the integument assessment, so it's going to show you that as well.
Those are the pictures that we take at the patient home, like the wound pictures that we take.
No. That would be under the Documents tab. I apologize. So if you had a picture, and I don't have one here. Now, the picture that was added here is typically going to be their profile, like a picture of their face under the Profile tab. That's usually what that would be. So you wouldn't typically add a wound picture right here, but you could. But it only lets you have room for one picture. So if you were to take a picture and you uploaded it, there's going to be an option to attach document. Oh, well, I think you get it from here as well. Upload additional document. You can do that, and it will open up a little file. You'd have to have it scanned into your device, or it'd have to be on your device that you're using. But then you do choose file, and it's going to bring up a Windows Explorer file, so you can try to find that file, and then hit open, and then you'll see the name of the file here, right here where it says no file chosen. Document status, you will have to change it to no action needed. Some of these are automated labels that we need to leave in there, but you can just say no action needed and type in a description if you want to, and then hit upload and close. Once you do that, the photo of the wound will actually be over under the Documents tab right here, and anybody that wants to view it would just have to click on the document description. Same thing with any additional documents, like if you guys uploaded a referral order that came over on the fax, or lab results, or anything like that, you guys can upload anything you want to this encounter, and then you can just click on the description, and it will open up that document. And then you can also, you know, for an AD, and this is where also there's a process, of course, for managing your orders. And if you upload the signed order to the Orders tab, you'll be able to do it by hovering over these action item menus. If these have a sent date in there, they don't right now. So there would be an option in here to upload document. And so you'd scan your signed physician order in, then you'd come here. In those orders, there's a little ID on each one of them on the bottom left-hand corner of it. So they can match that order to the ID number, and they'd upload it here. And when they do that, it'll automatically fill in a receive date. But then under the Documents tab is where anything uploaded to this patient chart is going to be located. So any paper service notes that were uploaded, if for some reason you had to do a service note on paper, you could do that and upload it here, but it will be actually displayed here all your signed orders. And then there's a download, print, selected document. So when you have documents in here, there'll be a checkbox next to every one of them. So if you had an audit for a certain time frame, you can just put in a checkbox next to every document within that time frame and download them all at the exact same time. But this is where they're going to be. And now there are different labels, and these are editable from the settings. So right now we have like assignment of benefits, certification, scan, consent for treatment, sign, consent for photographs, DNI, DNR, healthcare parameters. Anyway, we have quite a few. There's an other for just whatever, one for photographs. But we can actually, you guys can edit and create a different type of list if you want, altogether if you want. So we can label, wound pictures. If you wanted it other than photographs, we can say wound photographs or whatever you want. And then you can upload and close or upload and add more documents. But again, they're all going to be right here so you guys can have access to them later. They're stored in the cloud, so you can get to them from anywhere.
I just tried to do it, Tommy test, and it's not working.
Do what?
I just tried to upload one into Tommy test, and it didn't go in. So when you attach it, what's the difference between attaching it to an encounter versus patient? Encounter is the visit, the day?
No, that's a good question. Encounter means that and I recommend leaving things on encounter, just let it default to that. It means that everything uploaded and attached to this encounter is only going to be available for this encounter. So if you discharged and readmitted the patient, you're going to start from scratch on your documents. It's not going to carry over to the readmission, which typically you need all new home health consents and agreements, you need all new everything. So most of the time you do want to start from a clean slate here, but if you did attach something to patient, that means it's going to show up every time you discharge and readmit this patient. Even if it's 5 years ago, it's going to keep showing up throughout those encounters. So there may be something that you could, attach to a patient so it'll show up every time, maybe like a driver's license or, maybe their Medicare card. But then again, they may change insurance at any given time. So, you still kind of almost want to start from scratch on every encounter. But that's the difference. So
Okay.
It's either going to all be in this encounter, and then when I readmit the patient, it's going to start over. Or if you attach it to patient, then it's going to be there every single time.
And then what about in the document status drop down? Completed, fax,
On the
failed,
status,
fax, pass. Yeah, what are all the?
some of those are automated ones. So if you did get a failed fax, you will get notes saying that, or if it's been passed or sent. So some of these we need to leave alone. But there's completed. It doesn't really mean anything. We can do anything we want, but most of the time they're just going to say no action needed or completed. Either one of those two would pretty much be the ones that you're going to use the most. These other ones are just automated notes, or labels. They don't really do anything. It's just going to show you that the status, document status right here in this column right here. It's just going to tell you, no action needed or it's been completed, whatever.
Okay.
And then, of course, you can filter to different document types. So you've got those two in there as photographs. Now, just be aware, those trash cans, they'll let you delete them. If you upload something directly to this tab, it'll let you delete them out of here. If you uploaded something to the service notes over here, it's attached to that service note or that service, then that trash can is going to be grayed out and you will not be able to delete it under the Documents tab. without deleting that service note that it's attached to. So be careful on doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, we definitely have that functionality. So when you upload a signed order and it's over here, you upload it from here, you won't be able to delete it from here without. Now, development, if you ever had an issue where you accidentally uploaded something to the wrong patient or something like that, we can have development make corrections and remove things for you. And always know, that anytime you ever delete anything out of the system, usually you're going to get a warning because we can't bring that back. If you delete anything, it's gone forever. So just be aware of that. So if you accidentally deleted a service note by trash canning it, again, it'll give you a warning to say, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure you want to do this? So it takes, you can't just accidentally click it. You got to accidentally click 2 buttons to make it delete. And then we can also take that ability away from like field staff. Typically you don't want them deleting anything, but then the office staff or administrators will have the ability to delete things if needed. But, a lot of that stuff's going to be based off their permissions and role.
Okay.
But again, we'll get to all that training. We'll go through all that. Now, I know you guys are getting in there playing, which is great because some agencies don't ever touch it until I start training. But you guys have any questions before the training? You can shoot me an email, whatever you'd like. Of course, if it's an easy response, I'll give you a response in the email. Otherwise, we may have to set up another training just to kind of explain the processes. But we'll get to all those processes without a doubt. And then just so you guys know, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, up here in the help link, there's home health and hospice training. And you can search for any topic that you're curious about. And also on this menu here, it's kind of set up like our menu in Care Efficient as far as, the home, resources, etc. So if you click on those different things, you can go to, education about viewing schedules or moving service notes. And by the way, we do have an ability to move service notes. If you document it on the wrong patient, we can actually move it to the correct patient, but we need to do it before they document on the other incorrect patient because we have to have an empty place or an empty service to move those service notes to. We can still do it if they document it on both the wrong patients, but we have to kind of move the service note somewhere else, then move one, and then move the other one back, and it's kind of a hassle, but anyway. There's all kinds of education in here as far as your disaster plans, how to add a referral. And then she does really good screenshots and stuff in here as well and tells you what security permissions you would have to have for that role or for that function. So that's pretty up to date. And this is always updated. We do enhancements and upgrades constantly. To try to better the system and make it more user-friendly or have more functionality. So anytime we update the system, we put out release updates to let you know what we changed. So you guys can view that. And then we always update this education to be the most current education as well.
Are the lunch and learns once a month?
I don't know. She does them pretty regularly. I don't know if they're just once a month or at least once a month, but I think she does them a little bit more often, especially when we do enhancements and stuff. She'll usually do a lunch and learn just over those releases as well.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, guys? People on the phone? Okay, thank you, Brendan, for your time.
You're very welcome.
Thank
No
you.
problem. You guys Just shoot me an email if you need anything else.
All right, sounds good.
Training.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Have you seen the med profile?